Here I was having a strip of only women, only Black women. I didn't even include environments.
Country music. All right, guys, welcome back to Melanin Minds, empowering Black women creatives in the comic book and manga space. Today, we have a very amazing guest that I am extremely blessed and honored agreed to come and talk to me today. For those who don't know, she started out as a fashion writer for Essence, moved on to writing for a Black magazine and was doing relationship comic strips, and then shifted to comic strips that focus more on Black women issues, which is where we get the comic strip Where I'm Coming From, which centers around 12 Black women and their challenges going through life as Black women, which made her the first Black woman cartoonist to have a nationally syndicated comic strip. And she has had a Still Racism in America, a retrospective in cartoons. And I don't know when it's coming back, so I need to make sure to ask that when she gets up here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Brandon-Croft.
Hey.
Hey. Again, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to talk to me and just chop it up.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I know, I'm sure everyone, I mean, I've watched actually quite a few of your interviews. So I know a lot of people like to talk about your first, being the first Black woman to have a syndicated comic strip and your dad. But I really want to get really into you, like you and your strips and like how your intersectionality made this come about. So can you talk a bit about your background and how your intersectioning identities shaped your experiences as a creative?
Sure. So I just want to make sure we have this right, and that is that I'm the first Black woman to be nationally syndicated in the mainstream press. So
Mainstream, that's the word I left out.
yeah, but that's okay because what distinguishes me from the actual first Black woman to be a newspaper cartoonist who was Jackie Orms.
Jackie,
She was
yep.
in the Black press, and she was 60 years before me, and she did some incredible things back in the day. But that's before the mainstream press, which is honestly it's just the white press, would have Black faces drawn by Black hands, shown as real people on in their newspapers. So I just want to make sure that was clear because I don't ever want somebody to say, "Oh, she thinks she's the first and she's not," because I'm not.
And that was my bad trying to talk and mouth not working properly today for some reason, where I left out literally the word mainstream. I just did a thing on Jackie Orms the other day.
I love that. Well, I'm glad she's, through the internet and everything else, she's gotten noticed and she's gotten
I'm glad.
recognized and she's not going to be forgotten. And that's
I know.
really special. I'm glad you did do that. And one of the reasons I came back into focus, this isn't exactly the question, but the reason I came back into focus is because I wanted to be able to keep my dad's legacy alive. And as uncomfortable as I'm more and more comfortable, honestly, but as uncomfortable I am with the limelight, um, I was driven by making sure he's not forgotten. And then in turn, I'm out there because I'm here, and I can talk and I have a distinct story as well. My dad was great, but I have a story as well, like you suggested. Yeah. So let's see, kind of like my background. I'll try to be brief and let me know when I go on and on too much because I've been known to do that. But yeah, so um, of course, I'm born into being a Black female. That's already intersecting, things. Intersectionality is just by birth. I did start out by being a fashion writer at a trade publication, a white trade publication, mainstream trade publication. And it was a Black woman's magazine, Elan, that I wanted to get a job at. I wasn't making enough money writing fashion. And, you don't get you I was straight out of college, and I offered to do illustrations as well, so but it wasn't a lot of money. Anyway, Elon, Black woman, who's now like an iconic, literary agent, Marie Brown, was the editor-in-chief, and I managed to get an interview with her, and she was like, "You're kind of funny and you draw. You think you'd do a comic strip for us?" And that's where I'm coming from came from. I was just gonna do Black women talking. I knew what my audience was gonna be. It was gonna be primarily Black women reading the magazine. So I was like, just kinda in your face talking. And she loved it. And she's like, do more. We'll figure out how to spread it out in the magazine. Because of course, a magazine, that magazine was 12 issues a year. So 12 strips a year. I'm like, I can handle that. Um, and and frankly, the reason when she asked me, could I do a comic strip, the only reason I knew I could do a comic strip because I had seen it done. Talk about representation in my living room, in my home,
Your
and
house.
everywhere in my house. I was a cartoonist, and I knew what it took. I knew some of the what the ethic was, as far as getting the work ethic, as far as getting the meeting deadlines and things like that. So that's the only reason I was able to say yes. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I came up with this idea, and she liked it. And then the magazine folded. So it never got aired. I sent that comic strip to Essence trying to get a job. I wanted them to put the comic strip in there, and they're like, "Oh, we like it, but we don't want to put a comic in the magazine. What do you do since you're not making it as a cartoonist?" And I was like, "Well, I write fashion." And their fashion and beauty person, Paula White, was getting ready to take maternity leave, and they asked me if I would take a test, an editorial test. I was like, "Sure." I know nothing about beauty, but I'm happy to do that. And they're like, "We could teach you." I took the test. They liked me. Asked me. I quit my job. I was like, "I'm going to Essence for 4 months," and I quit my job. My mom was like, "Are you crazy?" But, at that like, when you're younger, you're like, "Psst, life is gonna be okay." As it turns out, Paula did not come back. They asked me to stay, and I ended up staying there for 5.5 years. Um, my dad got contacted by Detroit Free Press, which is a mainstream paper, and they're like, "We're trying to make our paper reflect our community, our readership. Do you know of any Black cartoonists?" Here I am. So he's like, "Barbara, you gonna do it? Are you gonna talk about it? You're gonna do it." I sent those very same strips that I came up for this Black woman's magazine all those years ago to Detroit, and they liked it. And not everybody, but the person who needed to like it liked it. The managing editor liked it. And so I got my debut there, 1989, first time. And just as you alluded to, when I first started out, a lot of what I talked about in my strip um, was about relationships and things like that. It wasn't until I was with a syndicate. Some folks don't even know what a syndicate is, and that's true. I grew up knowing because I had this dad. So I often try to, not just throw that word out so people know what it means, but it's a company that acts like your agent. So they have established relationships with all these newspapers. They put together a press kit on all these comic strips that they own, and they try to sell your strip. And the newspapers that want it, agree to buy it, they get paid, and in turn, they pay the creator. So, I knew I needed that because I couldn't make it with one newspaper, even though it was Detroit. I was very proud to be in Detroit. I have family in Detroit. Um, so that's how I entered that scene, and it was, the first time a Black woman's face, an adult Black woman's face drawn by adult Black woman, was talking to readers of, um, of all kinds. Whoever picked up the Detroit Free Press had access to it, and then all these other papers. In the heyday, I was in maybe 65 papers, and some papers had um, circulations of 800. I was in Atlanta Constitution and Journal um back in the time. Yeah, they did a story on me. It was a big deal for me. It was a big deal.
That's
um
huge.
but yeah, that's how I don't even know if I'm answering the question right, but that's how it came to be.
I, you may have. I don't remember. I was just intrigued in the story, honestly. I enjoy hearing about all of this, honestly,
Oh,
from everybody, just their start. Even if it's something that I've looked up, hearing it straight from the person's mouth makes
yeah,
it so much more like exciting.
good,
Like,
thank you. Yeah,
so
yeah,
I was just in it. You probably
yeah.
did in there. So that's good. I'm here for it.
Oh,
There was a story you shared on one interview talking about, I think it was how you realized that you like were an artist. Your dad like sat you all down and gave you like an art test and was like, "All right, draw," and you were like, "Oh, I guess I'm good at this."
yeah, that's pretty much how it went. So I am the youngest of three. Um, my dad was had a daily strip. He had a comic strip called Luther, and he was in just
Mhm.
about the same amount of papers that I ended up being in 30 years later. Um, 65, something in that range. His comic strip, but he also, and this is New York. I'm from New York, and he was working as an animator. He had this daily strip. He got called to be a person and part of a black children's show on it was a local TV show. He was Mr. BB. He was the artist. Luther Henderson, a maestro. He had done all these things on Broadway. Luther Henderson was the professor on the show. He did the music. And Joya Sherrill, who is a jazz singer and lyricist, she wrote the lyrics to A Train. She's a phenomenal person. It was Time for Joy was the name of the show. All black folks. And that my dad was part of that. And he had to do artwork for that. And he was busy. And doing the strip takes a lot. I did a weekly, he did a daily. It's a lot of work.
Mhm.
And there's at the end of putting a strip together, the way he did it, you put this film on the original artwork to show the color in the faces, the dots, and it's you cut it out, you put it on, you cut it out, you take it off. Anyway, he's asked. My sister wasn't interested. He asked my brother and and me if we would take an art test. He wanted to see he on a light box, mind you. He wanted to see who had a steadier hand, and we had to draw one of his characters. And my brother failed miserably. I mean, my
Oh,
brother's a brilliant science guy. He loves to fish. He's worked on curriculums. He's encouraged girls to get into STEM. He's retired now, but he's done all these things. But he was not a good artist, and so but my dad was like, "Barbara, you can do this." And I did, and I was not thinking that I was being trained to be a cartoonist, but indeed I was. So sometimes I would color in silhouettes. There was one occasion when I did the lettering because I had decent handwriting as well. Um, so I was being trained. I was doing a professional level cartooning when I'm in high school, junior high school, whatever it was. And to me, it was a means of making money. So I got $5 every other week to do it. It took up time and all that, but I did it. And I was getting trained. Who knew?
right. He was preparing you for the future.
Yeah, that we
So
couldn't
cool.
see. Yeah, that we could not see. Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm actually originally from New York.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. So when your comic strips came out, when they first got syndicated, I was still there. I was a little baby over in Brookhaven Hospital. I was
Okay.
born in 1989.
Oh my. Oh, baby. Yeah.
So I was probably, down the street somewhere, not
Yeah.
literally down the street, but
Yeah.
New York is big and small at the same time. So
Sure.
we could have been around the corner from each other at some point, not even realized it.
Wow. Wow.
But how do you believe now that your race and gender influence your creative process and the themes and topics that you put into your work?
Um, um, let's see, how can I say this? Everywhere, entirely, you know, omnipresent. I put everything about me into my strip. So um, here I was having a strip of only women,
Mhm.
only Black women. I didn't even include environments. I didn't even include bodies. I wanted kind of an in your face kind of way of talking. And I wanted a, not necessarily in your face like that, but
But
in your
like,
face, direct. Yes. And so you can look into someone's eyes instead of trying to find their cleavage, or
mhm,
seeing what their bodies look like, or having
mhm,
that tell the story about her, and just look at her head and her face and into her eyes. Initially, I was going to do, like, for the magazine, my idea was to do a different Black woman every time. So that's where the 12 characters came from, honestly. It wasn't until I was doing it for, Detroit. I did it for Detroit for a year before a syndicate even, that's, I'll talk about that too, but before I was syndicated, I did it for more than a year. I didn't get syndicated till '91, and, I was encouraged to, um, cut down the number of women that I used, and because people aren't gonna be able to identify with everybody. I mean, as if we don't have that many kinds of personalities, that and
right,
different types of women, but at least it wasn't just one. I had an
right,
opportunity. I ended up cutting it down to, I couldn't get it down to fewer than 9, you know, that I was ready to cut down to. Um, but yeah, and then I started having them talk to each other, as so that the reader could, it would be a way for you to kind of eavesdrop on, two girlfriends talking, and what they talk about and what they're thinking about and what issues matter to them. Um, the syndicate, um, I had an advocate there, Lee Salem, who's no longer with us, but Universal Press Syndicate is, a syndicate that really believes in their artists. He's the one that brought Aaron Magruder on. Um, when Boondocks was first in the papers, that's where he started, at Universal Press, where I was. But it's also Gary Trudeau, Doonesbury. All these, they really support their artists. And Lee was like, "You could push the envelope. You don't have to um, stay in this, kind of relatively calm box of talking about relationships. You can talk about all kinds of things." And I had already started doing that, but he was like, "You can do that more." So I started to um, talk about, because women aren't don't that's not the only thing that is of concern to us, is our relationships, um,
right.
whatever those relationships may be. But we're also concerned about racism. We're
Mhm.
also concerned about sexism
Medical.
on the job, you
Mhm.
know? We're also concerned about access to,
Healthcare.
healthcare,
Yeah.
abortion rights, you know? So I was able to, mouth off, so to speak, through my characters on those topics, and, um and I don't know if I made a difference, but I made some history, you know what I mean? I'm like, it was a way to, it was but it was all me. You ask how much do I put into it? But I put everything of my experience into my comic strip. I guess that's the best way I can say
Yeah,
that.
I truly believe that you made a difference and made history. Like,
Well, that's nice. Yeah.
um, from another interview, you were talking again, you talked about, like, don't have to look at boobs and stuff. And you were saying how you put the faces because you wanted them to focus on the face instead of doing like how people do when they draw women. And
Yeah.
it's like it's all about the body and what the body looks like and sexuality. It's like, no, I want you to pay attention to the women who are talking. And then
Right.
so you put hands in every so often for like expressive
Yeah,
um
to extend the
conversation.
expression. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
that is so smart and really cool. And then all the bits that I have read of it are the girls talking to each other
Okay.
about
Yeah,
different things.
yeah.
And so it's definitely interesting. I did read the one where she was talking about she was like, "Do you have that medical journal?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she describes her symptoms and she's like, "Oh girl, you have high blood pressure." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna talk to the doctor." And she was like, I mean, if you need a second opinion, sure, go ahead. And I was like, that's interesting because I think, funny enough, given how the healthcare system is against Black women, I'd probably listen to my girlfriend
Yeah.
before going to the doctor and getting a second opinion and them maybe telling me, yeah, I have high blood pressure, but then also waving me off
Yep.
because we know how the medical field is when it comes to Black women, healthcare, and how racism is embedded into the healthcare system.
Yep.
And I mean, as a woman who has 3 kids, which means I've had to go through the healthcare when it comes to giving birth 3 times, I have
Yeah.
definitely experienced all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a woman
They're not
who's
taking it
experienced pain.
being serious. Yeah, yeah. Oh, she's just I mean, Serena came very close to, during her
Mhm.
childbirthing situation. I mean, having, an issue where she could have
Yeah.
been no longer here. I mean, I'm very proud to hear that you have 3 kids and you're still here. You know what I mean? It's just like that because
Right.
the effects of, of we have a worse outcome than anybody in this country. We're like in third world, you know, uh, categories as far as outcomes of births for Black women. I mean,
Mhm.
us, uh, definitely Native Americans, Latina, but if you're white, you're very much more
Yeah.
likely to have a good outcome,
They're likely to
once you're giving
listen to
birth.
you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was able to. I mean, that's what I appreciate you bringing that up because
Mm.
I was able to talk about things kind of like that. And honestly, that came straight from me. I do that.
Wow.
Somebody, I'll talk to girlfriends and they'll be like, well, that sounds like, now there's the internet. So I'm looking up stuff and I'm like, I've been a fact checker. So uh, I know
Mhm.
what the idea of going to the primary source, just like you're saying, you're talking straight to me. So it's,
Mhm.
you can, you can say that this is true. What's going, because it's coming out of my mouth. Um, what my experience has been. But I've done that before, looked up stuff, tell my
Mhm.
sister, like, "I think this is going on because blah, blah," and she'll say, "Okay, well, I'll go to the doctor and mention it," and I've said 'cause it makes me laugh, I've said, "Well, go ahead if you need a second
Mhm.
opinion." I'm telling you what
No,
I think it is.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
Because it's one of those like that one. I think that one really stuck out to me the most because I've always been a relatively healthy person, but like I've had ever since I think my son was born, I
yeah,
had like intermittent pains and I kept going back to the doctor over and over again. And everyone was just like, well, it might be this, but we got to run more tests.
yeah,
And I finally actually left my old OB when a doctor, and this was a male doctor,
mhm,
male OB. He wasn't white, but
mhm,
he wasn't Black. If I
mhm,
can remember, I think he was Hispanic. And
mhm.
he told me, the more I think that I have pain, the more I'm going to be in pain. And so I should just stop thinking about the fact that I'm in pain. And I was
Wow,
just like, huh. And my grandmother was with me at that appointment. And she was just like,
what? Yeah, that's crazy.
and so I changed OBs after that.
I
And
I
I've been with
you
that
know
same OB for like 8 years.
Yeah, and is it a woman now? Because I
Yes, my new OB is a Black woman.
That's right, because I had something similar, because I had endometriosis, in my
And
younger years. You too? Yeah,
that's my
and
problem.
I was, like, in pain, I was like, "This is bad," and what did my doctor tell me? A white man said,
Mhm,
"If you, stop" how did he phrase it? He's like, "Well, if you stop, having your period or if you stop this, you'll stop that." Something that was just insane, it's like, so if you stop having I can't even remember now because 'cause I'm
well,
so into your story, but it was something very similar to, "If I stop doing something, you're not gonna have the pain." I'm
like,
like,
I can't just erase my period. I'm a woman.
"Yeah." And yeah, my life, it's like, "Come on." Yeah, so we are, and somehow through, decades and centuries of racism, they, consider that Black people can withstand pain more
Mhm.
than, white people. When they did all those experiments,
Those
those
experiments, right.
yeah, they didn't even give women,
Like, home
anesthesia.
med right.
They just
Just
went digging up there and trying to figure out what was going on because we can handle it. What?
right. So many Black women died those
Yeah,
experiments because of that, and
yes.
so unfortunately, that belief tends to stay within the
Yes,
healthcare system
yes,
today. And
yes.
so I don't know if this would be the example you would use, for this since we were talking about it, but can you give like a specific example of your identity influencing something specific in your work?
Um, I mean, almost I can open up my book and find one, and it'd be that would be specific. Like maybe this um one on my wall, because this is my looks like my studio. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
one
it
wall.
does.
It's
It
one
looks.
wall in my basement, but it has
I
my
wish
work
I
and
could see
my
it better
ancestors.
because it looks amazing. I just see
Oh,
all the art and the book
yeah,
right there.
thank you. Oh, yeah, in the book, yes. I'm trying to promote, but so I'm just trying to think of one because almost anyone you can pull out is going to be something that comes directly from my experience. But there's one there where her hair is long hair, just wavy, curly, and and then underneath it says the different what the different percent of humidity is. And as the humidity goes up, her hair grows, and ultimately her hair takes up the whole frame. And she's like, I knew I could have been a meteorologist, because you could just tell that this is a low humidity day. My hair's looking okay, that kind of
Mm,
thing. But when I was younger, I had a crazy amount of hair. I had a lot of hair. Also, there was a period where I cut it off, but I had a
same.
crazy amount of hair, and I certainly felt that. Like I knew.
That-
You start out the day. I could feel when I'm outside talking to somebody. It's like, don't even have to say it. I know my hair's growing. I can feel it. It was like, you know, and that's
Feel the poof.
yes, yes, exactly. And I'll bring up a character I have, Monica. So she's very fair skinned. She's got fine features. She's got light eyes. She has light hair, and it's long and wavy, and she's black, but she looks white. Um, so I liked using her, and I think, well, I know it's part of it. It's my experience, my mom's experience. My mom, she had sisters who passed for white. You know,
Mm,
she's had she's very fair, and even now, when you get older, you get lighter and more frail, and, she's in a place now, in a, facility, and they don't even know that she's Black. We have to remind them, it's like, "Hey," "she went to Howard," "She is an AKA," she's, sh it everything about her experience. She grew up in segregated Washington, DC, and she's told me before, she's like, "I didn't even know there could be white teachers until she went to Howard." She said, "We had the most brilliant Black teachers, and they were taught, perfect English." And, she went to, I can't think of the name of school. Um, but there were 2 big schools in DC, and the segregated schools. My dad went to Armstrong, and my mom went to, because 'cause they're both from DC, um,
yeah.
the other school, I can't remember. I hate that. I hate that. But
It
anyway.
happens to us all, I promise.
Oh my goodness, when you get older, it happens so much more often. But when, I liked using that character
Mm,
because, so here's a character who could pass for white, but she's like the blackest character. She's like one of the most militant characters, that I have. So it was fun to me to have, a white-looking Black militant character. So she will call people out, one of the ones with that was she's talking about her features. I got these gray, hazel eyes or whatever, long hair. And why do we still call this good hair? It took generations of my ancestors being raped and coming down, and we call this good hair. And it's so antithetical to good hair. It's because we have been, um, broken down and been
mhm.
raped, and there's a lot of, white ancestors. I was that's terrible. I was gonna say, I was appalled. That's probably more dramatic than I need to say. But when I did Ancestry, to find that 50% of my ancestors are from England, and, you know, and I was like, "What?" I recently, in February, was invited to Nigeria. I went for the State Department and did this um, workshop with other cartoonists. Brilliant time, brilliant cartoonist, great time. And in talking, with them, and I said something about, well, I guess because I got 12% of my ancestors are from Nigeria. That was a big hit. They're like, yay! but but I was saying, yeah, I know, but a lot of them are. They're like, of course, you're American. It was like it was
Right.
like nothing. It wasn't like It wasn't like you shouldn't be ashamed of any part of yourself. But I felt that kind of, oh my God, how can I? I'm like the most militant, white looking, quote unquote, just like this character. My mom's really white looking. I'm not really, but I'm just saying it's interesting to be able to talk about that dynamic and that
Right.
and how that is part of the Black experience. And I was speaking to it being part of the Black woman's experience
Right.
in my work.
Wow. No,
Yeah,
yeah, that's definitely important. I know on my dad's side anyway, I'm quite lucky. A lot of people don't have a knowledge of their history and their ancestry. My dad's side of the family being Caribbean,
yeah.
my grandfather is able to trace back like all
1600.
of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Right? So
1800.
I know on that side of the family, at the very least, come from I forgot. I have it written down somewhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like all of that, of course, the slave trade had many stops.
Yes,
And so stopped in the Caribbean,
yes,
specifically my grandfather, they're from Barbados.
yes.
And so, and then comes here. Now, my mom's side, I have no idea.
Yeah, yeah,
No idea.
yeah.
And so,
It's hard. I have a cousin who's been doing doing genealogy on his own, independent of ancestry.com. And
oh,
he's found out we've been in this DC, Virginia area. He could find us all the way back to like 16, 18, 1700s when and what's curious when you look more into the history of Black folks and how we got there and Warmth of Other Suns. I don't know if you read that, but it's a must read.
mm,
It tells about the Black migration and talks about how when it's not surprising to find that two different plantations had a man and a woman would have a relationship from two different plantations, but in the same area. So one of the plantations was um, ah, that's what happens with your mind. But anyway, that's
yep.
the real point is not the specifics. The real point is that's how it happens. And then
Right,
my husband has done some genealogy, or his family has done some genealogy, and we find out that his family is from Alabama, and similarly, um, they his mom's family and his dad's family may have come from two different plantations, but they made this connection. And I just love knowing that these strong connections, these strong family ties, didn't have to
right.
be. They weren't always subscribed. That they
Mhm,
were able to make relationships and families of their own in their own way, the way they want it, and not
right.
being held to what was dictated to them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think I think that at the time they had to do what they could considering how many families were split apart
Yeah. Yeah.
when they were sold, which is crazy. I can't
Which is
even
crazy.
imagine doing with my
It's
family. Like,
yeah, yeah. How are you gonna go back? And there's a great book. It's called Free Man. Um, and
oh
it's
yes, I
actually
love
a
that book.
historical novel. Yeah. And the you there's it starts right after Lincoln gets shot, and this one particular man is north, and he walks back down to the south to look for his family, and that's it. Also talks about the importance of the Black press, that folks don't really know the Black press. That's a lost history. It's not lost. People are putting it together and piecing it together
Mm,
and letting people know. And that's why it's great that you did that Jackie Orms thing. But the Black press was so important. through the years. And one of the things is they put in ads. I'm looking for my wife. I'm looking for my family. Slavery's over now, but I'm going to find you. And that's how people ended up finding each other. Some people
Mhm.
were fortunate enough to find each other. Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
I love us.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah. And in what ways do you see your identity reflected in your work even more so? And also, how do you navigate intersection in a competitive industry like comic strips?
Um, so like I don't want to say the same thing again, but
Yeah.
but
Look,
it
I feel like I'm asking you these questions, but you be beating me to the punch and answering a lot of them, and it's so awesome. It's not a complaint. It's so
okay.
awesome.
Yeah, I tend to talk too much, but I get excited about something and I can't stop. But so like everything I do with the strip now, even so now I don't have a syndicate. I haven't been syndicated since 2005. And when I first got a syndicate, the Universal Press, shortly after, maybe a year after, they said, okay, we're letting all the creators know that this really isn't sustainable. Newspapers are dying. You're not really going to be able to make a living on this forever. You know, certain people are, certain strips are just so great that and the newspapers will keep just a few,
Right.
and they maintain, but by and large, it's not sustainable. Um, so so I knew that. So with the syndicate, there was we had a deal where if my readership or my subscriptions, or whatever the right word is, if the newspapers that were buying where I'm coming from shrunk to say under 10, that either they can or I can say, okay, we're done. We're not going to do it anymore. And so that reality hit in 2005. Newspapers started, the first thing they go are strips. And mine was this anomaly anyway. I didn't fit on the comic page, it was
Mhm.
larger than regular comics. So newspapers had to find real estate basically for where they could fit my big old where I'm coming from.
Right.
Um, sometimes, and it was once a week, it wasn't a daily. So all those things were factors in why it ended that way. So I have not been syndicated since 2005. And by then, I had already had my son, but trying to raise a baby and, needing to my freelance work started amping up because newspapers were dropping. I needed to do more
Right.
freelance things. I ended up working as a fact checker, and that grew into being a research director at Parents Magazine, believe it or not. It was a great gig, especially when my kid was little, because I was like, we have all these experts, the advisory board. I'm living with an issue. How long is um, how long is bedwetting? When does that start? How do you end that? I could ask all those questions. You're like potty train. That's potty train means the daytime. Nighttime's a whole nother story. So it's like,
That is so true.
but
I'm
you know,
dealing with that right now.
I bet. Yeah, and it's like, how long does this happen? Well, when it happens, but I had access to these advisors that I could, I'm fact checking a story, yes, but on the side, can you tell me what I need to think about with my kid? So it was a perfect job to have. And I held on to it as long as I could. We folded over the lockdown. So that was the end of
Oh,
me
wow.
having a job, and that kinda coincided with me shortly after turning 65. It's like, "I guess I'm retired, what?" But in 19 what was it? No, not 19, 2016 when, that clown decided to run for president, it made me say, "I gotta do this again." It's like a fire in your belly. So I have done it again. I'm doing it again. Um, I'm not getting paid, and that's okay because it's good for my soul to do it and get it out there. So trying to figure out how to work into that kind of space,
Mhm.
um, and you no longer have a syndicate that's behind you, and it's just you. I used to just put it up on Facebook, and people were like, you need to do Instagram. I was like, Instagram. So then I started doing
Yeah.
Instagram, and what it
That's where I
does.
found you.
Yeah, see, I love that. So that's the so I just, and I have all these done, written that I haven't drawn up, and sometimes I do them and I don't even post them. I'm getting ready to do like a splurge, like a blast of a bunch of things that are on my mind, because these are some really trying times,
Absolutely.
obviously, and I can't help myself. So um, it's
Please
hard.
don't help yourself. Keep
Yeah,
going.
I
You
have to get
can
out
get
there.
her money, by the way, if we buy the book. I just want
Oh,
anybody
yes.
listening to know
Yes.
that, by the way.
You can buy the book, yeah, and the book has the whole story, I'm sitting here blabbing, but the whole story is in there about how I, put syndicates on blast and said, "Hey, you don't have any you haven't been picking up Black cartoonists, and you've never picked up a Black woman cartoonist. What's the deal?" And, while all of them rejected me, one did not, so it was, that's the way it worked, and, so now I just put it up on Instagram and Facebook.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So I know there's plenty, especially given even you just calling people out. What are the challenges you faced as a Black woman creative? And how do you stay resilient in the face of all the systemic barriers and the biases in the creative industry?
Yeah, that's just again, I was like, "Guess I just jumped you again with telling that story about being rejected from all these,
Hmm. Well, so
but
yeah, I guess the rejection would definitely be the challenge. But how do you
exactly.
keep resilient? How do you keep going?
Um, I find, that there's something in me, and that I think we all have it in us, but something in me that's quite natural. When somebody says, "Well, we can't take that, we can't do that," something in me is like, "Oh, yes, you can." It's like it even makes me feel, "You can't do this. Yes, I can." I just I never, even when they were saying, "You can't just do women. You can't just do Black women. You
Watch me.
can't you have to put these, characters in and why not is right. You gotta put these characters in environments, that's the way it's done." I'm like, "Well, then I'm gonna be an oddball in this, a rare bird." I'm gonna
Yeah.
be doing it differently, and, I was fortunate enough to find, after all those rejections, and I kept my rejection letters. I got one of the best rejection
Wow.
letters from, King Features. Um, it was like more than a page of why it wasn't gonna work. Yeah, and, so I appreciated that, because, and those are the kinds of things they were saying. You gotta do it daily, you can't do it weekly. You gotta put them in environments. You have to, how about if you know, add bodies and other people, like, mm, how about if you just have one character? Mm, so that's
Mm.
not the way I wanted to do it. Um, but I always felt like, well, you're telling me I can't. That makes me feel like I really can.
Gosh.
You know,
Mm. So
I can't
essentially, it
explain
makes
it.
me want to prove you wrong.
Yes, yes. Let me show
And
you.
prove them wrong. You
Yeah,
did in a
yeah,
big way,
yeah,
like in a really big way.
yeah.
And I,
I,
I
I
think all
yeah,
of us Black women in the comic space now, thank you for that.
yeah. For not backing down. I
For
mean,
not
because
right, for
yeah,
proving them wrong, because you proving them wrong let the rest of us know that we can continue to prove them wrong and we can do this too.
yes, yes, absolutely. Believe that you can. Everybody can.
Yeah.
And I again, I talked too long, but I was going to say that I had this experience on Good Morning America. So I was, being the first. I got a lot of, publicity. So
Mhm.
with one newspaper, and then in the early '90s, People Magazine, Good Morning America, this and that and this. It was very exciting times. But I can remember being on. Good Morning America, and sitting there with the interviewer. It was a white guy, um, and he was like, just before we started, he said, "So you just have Black women in your strip?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, how's that gonna get you more than 12 papers?" I was like, "What?" And then it was like, "Action!" So then the cameras were on. I was like, was that his technique to get me to be more animated because I had a little bit of an edge in that interview because it just
Mhm.
pissed me off. It's like I didn't even have a chance to say, "What the fuck?" I wouldn't have said that, but I didn't have a chance to even express that. Maybe I did in my face. I can't really control my face. But then it was like
Fair.
action. And so we had this conversation, and I felt like I had a little bit of a edge, because I
Mhm.
was that his technique to do that too, or was that something he really felt? I'm trying to give him an out, but it's probably
Right.
what he really felt,
It,
like
yeah,
this isn't gonna work. I'm like, well, guess what? It did work,
it
you
did
know?
work.
Yeah.
No one asks the older strips. No one asks Marvel, DC. No one asks any of the older cartoonists why all their characters are white.
Right. Right.
Y'all continuously come at us about our characters not being white.
Yeah. It's our experience. Come on. Give me a break. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've attacked this, but why do you believe representation is important in the creative industries, especially particularly for Black women?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, representation is because I mean, and you just really voiced that, when I'm so honored when younger people say to me, the fact that you did this made me think that I could do it. That's the importance of representation. If
Mhm.
I had been in that interview and trying to get a job at Elon, and she said, "Do you think you can do a comic strip?" and my dad was say a bus driver, I would have been like, I don't know. I might not have said, "Yes, I can." But I'd seen it. It was represented in my house. And growing up in the 60s and 70s when, it was a big deal if you saw anybody Black on TV. As a matter of fact, Jet Magazine used to have a page in the back that would tell you this week in television, it would tell you who was going to be on what show.
Wow.
Sammy Davis is going to be on Mike Douglas. Like, wow, this is the way you found out. That's how few Black people were seen. And we were so excited. And so now time has passed and we're represented all kinds of walks of life. We go from um something like what was that show on Stars, Power.
Oh,
I think,
no.
you know drugs and this and that, or The Wire or anything like that. But also we have Bridgerton, and we have
Right.
we have quite a range of we have doctors and we have lawyers and we have you
Mhm.
know it shows um that we are not a monolith, and that Black
Mhm.
folks do, and it makes all the difference in how you feel about yourself. If you're looking at a newspaper and you don't see any Black folks, now they may think that they're not doing anything wrong. This is just a newspaper. We're not this is but that is
Yeah,
so profound because what it leaves a young Black kid to feel is there's something wrong with me. Why am I not there?
right.
Maybe you start accepting being the other. I when I was at Syracuse, there was a the gallery is still there, Community Folk Art Gallery. But when I was there, it was like a storefront in the south side of town. It was a Black neighborhood, and Black and poor. So white folks that were poor, typical. That's how it goes.
Mhm.
That's where we're allowed to live, and the white folks who couldn't afford to live anywhere else lived there. Anyway, I used to do this after school. We'd have them come over after school and, maybe try to have them draw or do something. And I can remember I had like 6 kids. One was white and a little white girl. And they were like, we don't know what to draw. And it's like, well, let me give you some images. Look, here's some, you can look through the magazine. You can find something that you want to try to draw. And I was handing out magazines and we had ebonies. And she's like, oh, you gave me the wrong one. It's like, nope, it's not wrong. Nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that one. But she didn't see herself represented. It's like it's just interesting to see the difference it makes
Right.
uh, when you can see yourself. And I'm glad to have been able to show Black women out there, in white newspapers.
Oh, thank you. Again, on behalf of all women in comics in the current era, thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
And
Thank you. Thank
how
you.
do you use your platform or your work to advocate for greater representation and visibility? for Black women in this creative space?
Um, let's see. How do I use my work? I don't know, because my work is now what I do and put out there. Um,
Right.
maybe just by just keep doing it is the way I try to make it happen. But now I'm being invited to different Comic Cons and different. You mentioned the exhibit of my dad's work and my work called Still
Mhm.
in Racism in America. Um, that it's been to three different places. And the last place where it just ended at University of California, Davis, and before that it was at the Billy Ireland at Ohio State University. And so just by virtue of putting it out there and trying to push it and being invited and talking, I went to a school, a high school, and I went to two high schools in Columbus, Ohio, and um, who knew I was going to be invited to Nigeria? That was so sweet, But I've been invited to more and more things, and I'm and invited to do podcasts. Thank you very much, which gives me an opportunity to say things and put it out there. And I hope that is a way that I'm helping um, younger people coming out and realizing that they can do these things and realize that they should do these things and
Mhm.
just do it. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, that's what my husband says all the time. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Bringing it back to you specifically, like you, how are you able to reclaim your agency as a Black woman in a creative space? And are there any specific strategies or practices that you use on a daily basis or on a weekly basis just to empower yourself?
Um, I love that word agency. Oh my gosh, I always love that. Um, I I don't know if I don't know what I do specifically. Here's something that is a practice of mine. So when I wake up in the morning, I the first thing I make myself do is read the Washington Post has something called the 7. So it's like 7 things you need to know about today. And the New York Times has something called The Morning, and it's just a summary of what's going on in the news right now, and they highlight a particular story. Um, and that's part of my routine, and it makes me feel like I am informed and that I can speak about things going on with some kind of authority because um, 'cause I've read up on it. I just try to keep,
Mm.
up to date, and then they have quizzes, I love that. Sometimes I do better than others, but, at the end on Friday, it's like, "This is my quiz day," um, to see how much I follow the news, but the news is very important.
That's
It's
so
like,
cool.
I hope that again, my strip is kind of a rare I used to like to say odd I was kind of oddball, but it is, but, it's just a rare bird. It's an anomaly, just the
Yeah, it's
way
a
it
lot of the
is.
diamond in the rough.
Oh, there
Like,
we go.
balance
But
all the other
yeah,
stuff. It's like that shines so bright.
oh, that's so sweet, but the way that I can't be categorized, like, is it an editorial cartoon? Yeah, kinda. Is it political? Sometimes. Is it I mean, it's clearly a newspaper comic strip, but not anymore. Now it's on,
That's right.
online, so it's like it's hard to, pigeonhole it, it's hard to say what it is exactly, and I kinda, that kinda makes me feel empowered, that it's totally what I wanted to do and totally coming from me, and, I hope that's, a way for people to realize that, you can trust everybody here is unique. We all know we're unique, but
Yeah.
instead of worrying that you don't fit in, just embrace that, I don't fit so many things. I'm glad I'm being invited to. I'm going to the Comic-Con San Diego one. They've invited me as a special guest. I've never been there, and, I always feel very odd there at the New York Comic-Con, I've been to that one a few times. I always feel like a fish out of water. I'm like, "I don't quite fit this scene," because 'cause I'm not a comic book artist. I'm not maybe I'm an editorial
In the
cartoon.
traditional sense, maybe not, but I maybe it's because I grew up reading comic strips. I consider that comics.
It is comics. It
Like,
absolutely
that's you
is.
Like
Yeah.
maybe not comic book, but like
Yes.
you're
Yes.
you're still a comic artist and a comic writer because you
Yes.
write the strips. So like
Yes.
you're
And
ahead
my
of the
stuff
game than
is
some people.
yeah, yeah. And mine is heavily the writing is the main part, like that's
Mhm.
how I started. I'd write it out and then, keep looking in the mirror to figure out what the expression should be, and what would my hands do if I'm trying to say this? Because I use my hands a lot, but
Same.
um, but that's the way that's the way I do it. Um, so it's I don't know, just believe in yourself gives you agency, I think, just believing that trusting what what's undeniable is that we're all unique. So if somebody says you say something one of the highest compliments I've ever gotten is like, "You are such an original." It's like, "Thank you." It's like I we all are. And instead of trying to figure out how to fit in, kind of embrace what does make you unique and just let that be your force to let things come out.
I like that. And so how do you envision the future of inclusivity and representation for Black women in these creative spaces that we are absolutely owning right now?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was, like I said, when I was a kid and, not seeing any Black folks on TV in the papers and the magazines or anywhere, I had my dad who is, always, not only did he do Luther for the mainstream, but he worked for the Black press as well, and it kind of informed my way of looking at things. But, what was I trying to say? I was trying to say that, seeing the progression, seeing it go from hardly ever being on TV, and then there was like I looked at it as like a pendulum swinging. We go in and out of focus, like my dad
Mhm.
got his popularity in the late 60s, early 70s in the mainstream. They felt after Martin Luther King was assassinated, it was like the social reckoning,
Right.
you know, and then it out of style, out of style. Then back around the time of, you know, um, movies started coming out, more television shows. You can edit that out. More television shows started coming out, and you saw more Black folks on television. In movies. All of that. We were
Mhm.
popular again, and then not so popular. Then back again. It's kind of from my perspective, just being older, is how it works. And so, as far as the future, I think we're having a good time now. With who uh, each swing, it's a little bit more. So I am hopeful. I am certainly an optimist that we will be more and more recognized. And even though I was just writing this down, the de-evolution of America, with the current climate, you know, trying to take us back to the 50s or,
Mhm.
is scary. Um, I'm optimistic. I don't think it's gonna last. I think we're gonna get past this and put things in place, but it's scary to think of what's going on right now. Um,
Yeah.
but I think I was born an optimist. So I just think it's gonna grow better and better, not all at the same time. It's a swing. It's a
Baby
pendulum.
steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps, baby steps. We get
Yes.
there
Yeah.
one little piece at a time.
Right,
Right.
right.
And so lastly, I want to know what advice you would give to other Black women creatives who are navigating their identity and all of those kinds of things in creative industries, how to keep going, how to get started. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I always say that it's hard for me to tell people how to get started, because, I'm from a different time. Like, that's why I had trouble getting on. I was like, "Ah, technology," and that is the future. It's like, you have to stop resisting so much. I'm like I'm a
Mhm.
toddler. I was like, "What? This is something new. I want something I know,"
I
but
don't like change.
I don't like change. That's exactly right. So certainly don't be me. Don't do that. Don't follow my footsteps in that. embrace technology and embrace, because that is the future. Um, AI, what the heck? What's going on with that? You
I,
know, I got a email from my publisher saying that if you're getting this email, that's because your name was found on a list of cartoonists and other creatives who have been are being sucked up by this AI company, and there is a law firm that's putting together a class action suit. So I was like,
mhm.
if I'm and so then the list, it was like 4,000 names. And there I was on this list. I was like, part of me was kind of proud. I was like, oh, they wanted, they wanted my stuff. And then I looked further, they had my dad was on that list. I reached out to the law firm and I was like, if you're doing a law class action, I'm down. And I'm representing my dad too.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I just bring that up because that's part of the future. How is
Yeah.
that going to be handled? I don't know. Um, I would, like I was saying before, but I would encourage anybody out there to um, to just believe in yourself and trust in your uniqueness. Sometimes people want to be unique like somebody else. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm like, you don't have to copy somebody else. It's
You be unique.
yeah,
You have your own thing.
yeah,
There may be nothing new under the sun. Things may be similar, but if you're
yeah.
doing you,
Do you? That's exactly the theme. Do you and trust that you have something. Don't think you don't. You do. We all do.
yeah, definitely agree. Thank you. Thank you. And I am sure that'll hit somebody
I hope so.
just
Yeah,
the right way.
yeah.
Before we wrap up, I do have a little fact of the day that I like to share on every episode. Keita Smith gave us the first Black standalone superheroine in a graphic novel series called Raven Choi, which isn't about an orphaned African American girl who is sent to South Korea. It has a very interesting sounding story. I've been looking, actually have it saved because I plan to get it when I can
Yeah, yeah.
because it sounds very interesting. There's definitely more to the little blurb about the book that made me very intrigued. So I plan to get that soon. Also, we have a creative challenge every season that we do. That at the end of the season on our roundtable talk, I like to share everybody's creative challenges that they submit. They can submit via email, Instagram, just however you can figure out how to submit it. I want your poems. I want your comic strips. I want your music, whatever. We're continuing over from season one with the theme of activism through art. So remember that theme is the same. Get your creative challenges going because we're already here, about to wrap up this season two already, and it's absolutely crazy to think that that is a thing that's happening. Uh, um,
Congratulations.
thank you. Other than that, Barbara, please tell everybody where they can find you, your social media links, your website, and where they can buy your book because
Yes.
people need to be buying the book.
Yes, they do. They do. So, I my Instagram is my name, Barbara Brandon-Croft, no hyphen, all together. And I got one of those little blue checks, so you'll know that it's actually me, 'cause, there have been other ones that popped up. I was like, "That's not me." So Barbara Brandon-Croft on Instagram. I have a website now, barbarabrandon-croft.com. So creative. That it's all put together, smushed
Simple
together.com.
and straightforward.
Yes, yes.
Makes
So
it
people can
easy.
yeah, so they can find it. So that's my website. So you can read more about me and my dad. You can even buy the book through the website. Um, it'll take you to Amazon. Anywhere you buy books, you can find it. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, independent bookstores, all carry it. It's a hardcover. It's so when you see the price, you're like, what? No, but it's a hardcover,
There's
and
a
it
lot in
has
the book.
it's a lot of information in that book, and I love the fact that Rebecca Wanzo wrote a, a a piece in it that kind of puts my work into historical context. She's a professor, um, and Sharon Pandana wrote a piece about my life growing up, and I wrote a couple of pieces in it, and then there's the selected number of strips, including some of my latest ones. Well, latest when the book came out. Not the latest, but yeah. Later, I should say, later strips, yeah.
You want to see the latest, since the book came out, make sure you're following her on social media, on
That's right.
Instagram,
That's
so that
right.
when she posts them, you get to see them.
Yes. Yes.
And all that kind of cool stuff.
That would be
And
great.
that's
That would
how
be
you
great.
can see that. It looks really good. Duh. So support. Like, there's literally a legend in the house, guys. Like I don't
Aw.
know what else to tell y'all. But
Thank
of
you so
course,
much.
of course. Before we go, of course, remember you can find us here at Midnight Comics, everywhere at Midnight X Comics, except for Facebook and YouTube, where we're just Midnight Comics. And if you're looking for me specifically, you can find me as official_Toshi J, TOSHIJ, everywhere except for YouTube and Facebook, where I am just Tashi J89. Thank you guys for listening to this amazing episode of Melanin Minds. And remember that a small spark can lead to a big flame. And we see you guys on the next episode.
Night, it's summer night. She left me so late, should've spent the night. No need to hit follies, I'm working her body out since she in love with the fitness type.